Hey everyone, this video is going to be quite different from what we normally post, as I just felt like I needed to post this. This will be a long explanation about diabetes, my experience with it, and how I felt VR supported me in a time where I felt I had no other options. Just to be clear, I'm not stating that VR is a cure for diabetes. Instead, I'm just going to talk about how it helped me control it. I'm not good at editing, but I'll try my best to show whatever it is I'm talking about. But it's going to look like one giant PowerPoint presentation. This video is mainly for those who have diabetes, but feel free to keep listening as maybe what I'm about to tell you could scare you into changing your routine. So hello, my name is Alessandro, I'm currently 23 years old, and I have the horrible honor of having type 1 diabetes, and this is my diabetic hero. Now before I go into the specifics of how VR helped me out, let me explain the extreme basics of diabetes. I'm not an expert, and I haven't even been diabetic for a year, so sorry if I make some mistakes with any information I give. For those of you who don't know, there are two types of diabetes. Type 2, which consists of insulin resistance, where the body begins to resist the effects of insulin, thus increasing sugar levels in the body, and type 1, which is an autoimmune disorder, which causes the body to not produce enough or any insulin, and thus raises the amount of sugar in the body. I started taking insulin when I left the hospital on January 29th, 2020, but my fight didn't start there. Let's go back to about 2 weeks before I left the hospital. I currently go to a university while also working part-time with my father in renovations. The reason I mention this is because they are both places where I began to realize there was a problem with my health. The earliest time that I could remember where something felt off was when I was on my way home from school. There's a 40-minute walk which I have to do to get home, and it's something that I've done for about 5 years and I never had a problem with it. But this time was a little different. Not once, but twice I felt a really painful cramp on both my legs while walking. It felt like my legs would break if I took another step and ended up limping the rest of the way home. It stopped hurting after I rested a bit, so I assumed I must have pulled a muscle. I wasn't the biggest, strongest guy either. I was about 120 pounds and around 5'4", but these types of small trips was always fine for me. The next occurrence was while being at work. Now, I've worked in renovations with my dad since I was a little kid, but one day I was unable to lift anything above 40-ish pounds. I ran out of breath really fast and I had a constant thirst, which led to a frequent visit to the washroom. My dad realized something was definitely off, so he wanted me to have my blood sugar checked to see if I had high blood sugar, as some of these are symptoms of it. Now, the reason he suspected this was diabetes instantly was because diabetes is known to be somewhat genetic, and since he had type 2 for a few years, and so did his father, he went straight for a blood sugar test. Now, I'm going to explain the ranges of blood sugar. I'm from Canada, so try not to get mixed up with blood sugar ranges from other countries that use other units of measurements, like milligrams per deciliter. From what I understood, a good range for blood sugar or blood glucose is around 4.8 to 7.8-ish before a meal and somewhere between 7 and 10, 2 to 3 hours after a meal. If you have anything higher, it could be seen as diabetes, especially if your numbers don't drop down to a stable range several hours after eating. When my dad and I got back home from work that day, it had been 5 or more hours since I had my lunch, and unfortunately, my sugar levels were almost 25, which pretty much guaranteed me being diabetic. I didn't know what the number meant at the time. My dad didn't want me to stress out and panic, so he stayed calm and told me to stop having sugar and do some exercise with him so that it would go back to normal. I listened to my dad because I knew he had diabetes for a while, so he must have known what to do. After a few days of cutting all sugar and changing what I eat along with doing daily exercises, it went down to around 11, but when the week was over, it shot back up to 25. This was January 28th, the day I entered the hospital. It was a long 25 hours with the IV pumping I don't remember how many liters of water in my body, but when I was out, I learned two things. I have type 1 diabetes, which they assume based on my age and weight, and I'd be injecting insulin in my body 4 times a day. It felt like Christmas with all the stuff I was getting. 2 types of insulin, the glucose tester, test strips, needles, and the insulin needles. Since the body cannot produce enough insulin, it must be injected manually depending on what you eat as well as how high your current blood sugar levels are. Sugar definitely affects your blood glucose, but so does carbohydrates due to it turning into sugar in the body. If I see that I'll be having a high carb meal like pizza or pasta, then I take more units of insulin. Now there was two types of insulin I was taking. The meal insulin, properly named for when you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, along with the night insulin, which is taken before bed. At the time, I was only taking what they considered baby doses, because my body was quite sensitive to the insulin, while also still producing a small amount of insulin. This is known as the honeymoon period. This is when your body still produces a small amount of insulin, but eventually it will stop. It could be days, months, or even years, but eventually it will stop. To put it in simpler terms, my procedure was measure blood glucose using the dumb perk and strip method, apply insulin based on the amount of carbs or sugar eaten and the number of my current blood glucose, wait about 10 to 15 minutes, and then eat. This is what I had to do 3 times a day for every day for the rest of my life. And this isn't even including the night insulin, which is basically the same procedure, but instead of eating, I sleep. When I mentioned baby doses, it was because I was only applying 2 units of insulin for each meal and 8 units at night, while others would inject well over 10 units per meal, which I really find terrifying. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. When you eat foods or drinks with sugar or carbs, your sugar levels go up. So why not just eat veggies only? Why not eat foods with low carbs and sugar only? Well, unfortunately, carbs and sugars aren't the only thing that affect blood glucose levels. Some other examples are tiredness, and most importantly for me, stress. For me, stress is the hardest one to keep in control when too many things are happening in my life at one time. Stress can come from so many things that it might actually be impossible to list them all. It can be from something like a school assignment, or also from something like the death of a loved one. There is truly no stress-free life, especially in 2020, where the world is in utter chaos. So how am I dealing with stress? Well, that's simple. I don't. I wouldn't say I'm dealing with it, but I do have some amazing friends who keep me company and happy, even if I am only seeing them online lately, as well as some encouraging music from a certain star who has been by my side for many years, even if she isn't real. Let's skip a few months, as I was mainly living my life using insulin 4 times a day with only a change in diet, but not exercise. Over the next few months, my numbers would become more steady, but one mistake caused me to be in a state that I wish I haven't felt: hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is like the opposite of diabetes, where there isn't enough sugar in the body. There are a bunch of symptoms that you begin to feel all at once, which gives you a really horrible feeling when you do experience it. Some symptoms include hunger, sweat, confusion, weakness, shakiness, loss of consciousness, and even death. Definitely be careful with the amount of insulin you take before meals or sleep, because you do not want to experience any of these during the day, and especially not in your sleep. This creates another problem. You don't want to eat too much because you're scared of having high blood sugars. But if you don't eat much and take insulin, then your chances of being in a state of hypo goes up, and thinking of all this results in stress, which in turn raises your blood sugar. Since I've had quite a few cases with hypoglycemia, my endocrinologist, someone who specializes in diabetes, gave me a prescription to a Freestyle Libre, as well as a new night insulin called Tresiba. Now the Libre is a small device that you attach under your arm and will remain there for 2 weeks while you eat, sleep, take a shower, and will constantly keep track of your blood glucose numbers. With this device, you can use your phone to scan your glucose levels anytime you want. This is much better and less painful than having to prick myself multiple times a day in certain times and always panicking if I'm going to run out of test strips or needles. The new insulin, Tresiba, is a newer type of insulin that can be taken in the morning or night and lasts approximately 24 hours rather than the old 8-hour night insulin I had before. The main benefit of this insulin was to keep your blood glucose levels in a good range while also lowering the risk of hypoglycemia. With the new night insulin replacing my old one, my new insulin schedule was 2 units per meal 3 times a day for the meal insulin and 8 units of the new night insulin. Now, I talked a lot about what it means to be type 1 diabetic. But where does virtual reality fit in all this? As I mentioned before, I haven't really done any exercise since I came out of the hospital, besides doing renovations with my dad. Sure, I change what I eat, but it doesn't help much in my opinion if it isn't backed up with some exercise. Daily exercise is recommended to enhance insulin action, which is why it's a good counter to taking a large amount of insulin. In other words, instead of taking a large amount of insulin, I could take a smaller amount, or none, and then after my meal, do some exercise to get my numbers low. I'm more of an indoor guy who likes to spend his time in front of a computer, so there was no way you can get me to be active, which is why I needed an alternative. But this alternative didn't come specifically for my diabetes. I bought an Oculus Quest around the beginning of June and got it 2 weeks later. I didn't get it for the exercise and definitely didn't get it for my diabetes. I simply got it because a friend of mine told me how awesome it was and that the price wasn't as high as some of the premium VR headsets that go above $1,000 like the Valve Index. I was always curious about it since the first HTC Vive and Oculus Rift, but always thought it was too expensive or too early to buy one. Not sure why I did, maybe an impulse buy, but something was telling me that that was what I needed at the time. It's been a bit over 2 months since I got my Quest and my insulin schedule has changed again, from 2 units per meal and 8 units at night to no mealtime insulin and only 7 units at night. An exception to this is if I have a high carb meal, then I'll have some units of insulin for those. Obviously, this is quite a huge change, so let's get into what I consider my diabetic hero. Now, although I bought a bunch of games because I wanted to try a bunch of new experiences, I'll be focusing on 3 that I play on a daily basis for 1 to 3 hours. Beat Saber, Pistol Whip, and Synth Riders. All rhythm games. Now, I know about Box VR and others which are popular for fitness, but either I didn't try them or I refunded them because I didn't really like it. Out of the 3, Beat Saber was the most intensive for me, so I'll leave that for last. I might as well just go from what I believe was the least intensive to the most, and I'll show you some gameplay just to show what kind of workout you'd get out of it. Of course, I'll be showing some examples from my Libre device of how my blood sugar levels go down after some of my sessions. So I'll start with Synth Riders, a what I like to call catch the ball type of rhythm game, where you move your hands and body to catch the colored balls that matches with the ones on your hands. For me, I don't move much from easy to expert, but master difficulty is where the real fun and movement comes in. I normally play the lower difficulties as a way to cool down before ending my session. This is a game with custom song support, so as long as the community makes maps for it, I can play without getting tired of the same songs for a while. The next game is Pistol Whip. Basically, it's a rhythm shooter where you time your shots with the beat as well as hit people with your gun when they're up in your face. A lot of Beat Saber maps have you swinging your arms around with little to no body movement, but this game forces you to move your whole body. The enemies in the game will always target your face, so when they shoot at you, you need to duck or move out of the way while also shooting back at them. This can get really intense and get you sweating after a bit of playtime. The best way to experience this game and have a great workout is to replay the songs until you know the beat and enemy placements, then just go all out and have fun with it. There's no custom song support for it at the moment, but they are frequently updating the game, so it's another one you won't get bored of real soon. And the last game, Beat Saber. If you ever heard of VR, Beat Saber needs no introduction. It's a game where you hold 2 different colored swords and slash the same colored blocks that appear in front of you in the directions shown, while also dodging the walls that block your way. The community of this game is rather large, building dozens of mods and having hundreds or thousands of custom songs made for it. This is a game you'll be playing for a long time. Although I feel like a good amount of the maps have you mainly swinging your arms around and not moving your body, I still see this as the most intensive game for me. With the help of the community making stuff like Beat Sage, you can pretty much take any song that you want to listen to and make a map for it. So I don't think you'll get bored of this instantly. So I play these daily for a total of 1 to 3 hours, and sometimes until I just can't anymore. As a result from this, I no longer took my meal insulin and only took the 7 units at night. So, as I promised, here are some examples of my blood sugar levels before and after playing in VR. The range on my app is between 4 and 10 because that's what my doctor recommended, and it makes sense since sugar levels can go up to 10 for a non-diabetic 2 to 3 hours after a meal. I said this before and I'll say it again. VR is not a cure for diabetes. This type of routine may not even work for everyone, but for me, it's a great way to get my blood sugar levels down, and thus results in me having to take less insulin. If I can have fun with new experiences while also staying in shape and keep my blood sugar in a stable range, then that's a win-win-win for me. As a big reminder, just because you may be doing more exercise than you normally would, this does not mean that you can start to eat whatever you want and then exercise to lower your blood sugar. I'm definitely not telling you to stop using insulin and use exercise as a way to lower your blood sugar. What I am saying though, is that you should continue to eat healthy and then match it with some exercise, while also keeping it in control with the help of insulin if you cannot keep your blood sugar in a stable range. Eat healthy, keep moving, and don't stress about your diabetes. Be in control of it. Don't let it control you. So, where does this bring me today? Currently, as I'm recording this, it's the 16th of August, and I still have the same schedule, but instead of 7 units at night, I'm switching between 7 and 8, as sometimes when I take 8 units at night for a week, I end up in hypo during my sleep, and when I take 7 units each night, my blood sugar levels are not as stable as I want them to. So although exercise alone may not keep my blood sugar completely stable, it still got me taking a lot less insulin than I used to. So I took quite a long break from this video to see how my results would change over a long period of time, and it still seems that VR is helping me control my sugar levels. I normally use my headset at home, but when staying at my mother's place for a week or two without exercising, I can definitely tell you it's much harder to control my diabetes, and I would need to take more units of insulin than I have ever taken before. It could be a combination of no exercise and the fact that I think my honeymoon period is over. In November, I've been consistently taking insulin with my meals unless I'm only eating something like veggies and meat because I would get into hypo if that were the case. But I can still say that VR is helping me control my diabetes. Over the few months, I picked up a new rhythm game called O-Shape. This game is like those game shows you see on TV where you have to fit inside the human-shaped holes. I would say this game gets me moving more than Synth Riders and Pistol Whip, but not Beat Saber. The custom song support always helps keep a game interesting, which I think is a great addition.
Girl said you hallelujah. Girl said you hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch.
It's been a long year. I'm sure it has been for everyone. My hope for this video is to help anyone who may be feeling stuck like I was or in a similar situation. I'm not saying everyone with diabetes should buy a VR headset, but what I am saying is that if you do have diabetes, take control of it, no matter what you have to do to accomplish that. For me, it was VR. For you, it can be something completely different. I definitely regret having too much sugar on a daily basis, but I shouldn't be worrying about the past. I should focus on the present and how it can change my future. I don't even think this video will get noticed by anyone besides my friends, but I just felt like I had to make it for me. I've been planning this video for a bit and finally had the courage to put it together. I want to thank my friends for staying with me through all of my tough times, even if they didn't know about them. You guys are a huge part of what keeps me strong and want to work hard to be the best version of me possible. To all of those with diabetes, stay strong. We are all a big family who wants to help you. Diabetes may be permanent, but keep being in control of it. Don't let it control you. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you for watching. Love you all.